Hello, hello out there, and good evening. And to the bold alone, welcome back. This is episode 12 of the Tuesday Night Fiction Podcast, and I'm Nicholas Austin. Tonight we're going to be discussing chapter 6 of the book Crimson River, entitled Gossamer. And as the title would suggest, tonight we will be discussing all things lies, because Gossamer refers to a spider's web. And I want to talk about being trapped in a web of lies. And from beginning to end, I mean for like 60 minutes straight, because it seems like the whole of the past week or two has just been leading up to this moment, to this chapter. And it's like there's a whole lot of things that are just all kind of coming together, and I'd like to discuss that. So without further ado, let's talk about what happened in chapter 6 first. So to start, Dominic and Jeannie and Harrison are leaving Haran. By the way, this is a recap before I continue, so any spoilers are your fault. You know this is serial. I put it in every single description section for this podcast, everywhere it is. So if you didn't realize this is a series, get with the program. Join the Civil Gang and start with episode 1. Let's get this show on the road. All right. Anyway, so Jeannie in chapter 5 figured out that her brother Harrison survived the fire at her home, and now they're reconnecting as well as deciding to leave. So they're talking with Dominic, Hansa, and the Kennedale sisters in Haran. Hansa makes it clear that he's going north. He's going north to the mountain lands to find his uncle. He has to. It's his only way now, with the people of the Riverlands having traveled south and the councilman who betrayed his father. Hansa needs to go north to find his uncle, to communicate to him what happened, and as well as the leaders further north at the Great Fortress, including Grand Chieftain Varric. Now, this is news to Harrison, Dominic, and Jeannie. But because Hansa played such a pivotal role in saving Jeannie's life, because Harrison and Jeannie and Dominic really don't have anywhere else to go, and an alliance with the Vahani is very important to Harrison and Jeannie, whose father served as a facilitator of an alliance between the natives and Easterners in the Riverlands. They decide they're going to go north with him. We follow Dominic's point of view here, though. We do follow Jeannie's point of view, who is reconnecting with her brother at the beginning of this chapter and then being led out of Haran, which is run by the Keegans at this point, by Dominic. So Dominic, remember, is the illusionist. He's the fancy magic man. And on the way out, they run into a guard named Colin McCormick, who is kind of just tired because they're leaving super early in the morning. And Dominic thinks they're about to get out of town really easily. Jeannie thinks they're about to get out of town really easily, when suddenly Colin kind of sleepily remembers he needs to check the wagon that they're hiding in. And Dominic, in a last-ditch effort to distract Colin, conducts a magic trick, a fire-breathing magic trick. Blows fire into Colin's face. He gets distracted. It doesn't completely burn. It doesn't burn his face. It's just kind of blown over in his direction to distract him, and Dominic quickly knocks him out. With that, the comrades have left Haran. They're traveling north now. They're going to the mountain lands to find the Vahani. Now we're spending this entire chapter in Haran. We're gonna continue with Daniel's storyline for the rest of this chapter. However, I just want to get back to why Dominic is such an interesting character really quick. So being an illusionist, being that he has this special skill set, we can see him do a lot of different things. And right here, he makes an interesting decision. So Dominic, in the beginning, when he first ran into Jesse Billings at the saloon, felt he had no other choice but to kill the man. He was also growing kind of frustrated with that guy. So he decided that the way Jesse was putting the children at risk, it was in his best interest to go ahead and throw the knife into the man's face and take him out. Dominic then communicates to the Kennedales in this chapter what happened at the saloon, and that's how they kind of learn of that information. But Dominic, in this case, with Colin McCormick, who seems to be a little bit more laid back than Jesse Billings, or maybe just a little more tired, but a different character altogether. And Dominic, having learned from his first experience and how much it kind of traumatized him, as we know, Dominic used to be a member of a gang in the past, not the Keegan gang, but a different gang, since the Murrieta used to be filled with more gangs. He was requested to kill in that gang, and it really got to him. He never wanted to have to do that again, and Adonis Morel provided him with that ability. But now that the Keegans have swooped in, things have changed a little bit. So Dominic was forced to kill Jesse, but now he decides that he can get away from this situation with Colin without going for the kill, and he feels much better about it. He doesn't have to take the measure that he did before, and that's a big moment for him here. And with that, they continue on. Dominic lies and tells Colin that he's traveling west for a show, which Colin believes because he mentions having met Dominic at the saloon earlier in the day, or earlier in the evening, sorry. And so they continue on. And then we meet Daniel. So this is I think this is Daniel's first chapter, if I remember right. Pretty sure he's been in the story, but this is his first point of view. And through Daniel, we meet Charles Langston again. Charles the Oaf, the self-proclaimed mayor of Haran, who has an interesting chapter himself. Charles Langston is kind of not really well embraced in the town, which is what kind of makes his claim to be mayor ironic, but he does know a lot about the town. And he is the first one to tell Daniel that he doesn't trust all the members of Haran, particularly the Kennedale sisters. So like Charles had mentioned previously to Dominic, he now says to Daniel, who he's infatuated by, that he doesn't trust the Kennedale sisters. And Daniel doesn't get too much of a good read on Charles. He doesn't seem to like him very much. Sorry, he gets a good read. Daniel is very good at talking to people, very good at winning people over, but he does not have a very easy time with Charles. He was a very frustrating man to be around. And Charles tells him of his distrust of the Kennedales. He tells Daniel that he doesn't believe the Kennedale sisters are happy with the Keegans being there. And Daniel's whole purpose here in Haran is to make sure everyone's happy. His whole purpose here in Haran, he's the businessman of the three Keegan brothers, and he comes to Haran in order to firm up the relationships that Adonis Morel had built. And in coming to the Murrieta in general, and especially the Riverlands in particular, this was the Keegan's goal. With Adonis being killed by Clovis against the will of Daniel and William, now he's got to do a little bit more work. And with Jeannie and Harrison gone, that makes things even more difficult. Of course, Daniel doesn't know yet that Harrison is alive. However, he knows that Jeannie is out there somewhere. He's just not sure where. And having to do it all himself in a town that his gang had to overpower is going to make it even harder. And that is the first lie. So this is the first lie of the chapter that we kind of see more of, is who fired first. So Clovis's story to the Keegan gang and to Daniel and to William is that Adonis Morel fired first on the Keegan gang when they came to their home and overtook it, and told Adonis that it was time for him to go and that he would need to turn over all his power, essentially. So Clovis said that Adonis fired first and they had no choice but to retaliate. William and Daniel believe this lie. And if not, then they just really don't look into it too much, to be honest. They believe it because they believe their own people. They know Clovis is a troubled man. They've been trying, I mean, coming to the Murrieta, they've tried to help him. And they've done so by putting him in a militaristic type position within their gang, giving him authority over their exploits. However, this leads them trusting him blindly and wanting to avoid the things that he's done. Leads them into a difficult place. And we see that when Daniel talks with the Kennedale sisters. So in his discussion with the Kennedale sisters following his discussion with Charles, Daniel confesses, and really does it, I mean, at first he does it to intimidate them, but really over time we can see that Daniel is troubled by the way Clovis acts. Daniel confesses that their exploits have allowed Clovis to act unhinged and unchecked in particular. Clovis kind of just has gone from town to town and he's conquered, which is what they want. They want control in the Murrieta territory, so they have allowed him to overtake their enemies and acquire allies by force. Now, Daniel has had experiences with this, as we find out in his description with the Keegans, and it scars him. So from this, we can see that over time, one lie, that it's not as bad as it seems, or that it's helping Clovis in the end, so the ends justify the means. One lie leads to the other, it leads to the other, and then you have Daniel telling this story to these sisters, and he can hardly get it out without just being disgusted by his memories. And so when he hears the tale when he hears of a possible opposing side to the story, which he actually doesn't, but when he hears that there's a suggestion of an opposing side to the story, that maybe Clovis didn't do what he said he did, it's almost not that he doesn't believe it, but just that he's not even able to register it. And that's what happens when you lie. And we'll get to that more and more as we talk about this today. But you block things out. You don't trust yourself. You have judgments that you make immediately, subconsciously immediately. You'll see something, you'll register it, the truth of it. And the more cognitive dissonance you acquire because you tell yourself this doesn't matter or that doesn't matter, the more you will not even be able to see what just happened. You will be based in a reality that is not there. It won't even be an active decision. It's not an active decision for Daniel to dismiss the story that Clovis didn't do what he said he did. It's not an act, like he's not making the decision. It's almost as if he can't even register it. And that's what we're going to see more of as this story here unfolds. But until then, so Daniel is told by the Kennedales, actually, who, upon hearing of Dominic's kill of one of the Keegan members, they fabricate the next lie. They fabricate the next lie, which is that Charles Langston was the one who killed Jesse Billings. And they do it out of fear. They pretend that they were hiding this out of fear and trick Daniel into believing them through their own knowledge and their own fear. And Daniel feeds off that. And just as he finds out, he's called to talk to Colin McCormick, who Colin McCormick then urges him, he begs him to allow him to go north after this Nicholas McFarlane fellow. Nicholas McFarlane being the alias Dominic used when he first met Colin McCormick when they were leaving town. And I think he also used it in the saloon, if I remember right. Yep, he did use it in the saloon because Jesse was calling him that. So everyone in town knows Dominic as Nicholas McFarlane. And Colin desperately wants to go after Nicholas McFarlane, aka Dominic. So Daniel allows it. Daniel talks to Colin and he allows it. He sends him off with 2 other men. Then, returning back to the Kennedale sisters, he has them guide him to the body. Thanks to Dominic's description, they're able to find the body, point him to the body. And that's the first bit of evidence. Then when he goes and confronts Charles, he provides the story that the Kennedales told him, and Charles confirms the details, which they were told again by Dominic. Turns out that Charles was actually outside the saloon that evening. Reliably, Charles is a nosy little bastard. We've all known one of those in our day, haven't we? So Charles is a nosy little bastard. And in the scene where Dominic is forced to kill Jesse, it's noted before he stumbles upon him that there was some talking out front in front of the saloon. Turns out that was Charles and Jesse. And in fact, Charles actually did tell the truth, ironically enough. Charles is a simple man, again. And simple men have a much harder time lying, ironically enough. So for him, he tells the truth about the incident. He saw Jesse Billings out front of the saloon. He talked it over. Charles is the mayor, but he also thinks himself to be something of like I don't want to call him an officer. I'd call him more of a community watch volunteer. I don't know if I'm using the right term there. Whatever people do, neighborhood watch, is that better? Sure. He thinks himself something of a neighborhood watch in Huron, so he's monitoring the saloon to see who's drunk. However, having told Daniel that he was there and did in fact see Jesse, confirms to Daniel enough that the Kennedale story that there was an escalated fight outside of the saloon is believable. And Charles only continues to confirm the general storyline that the Kennedales told, so Daniel goes ahead and apprehends Charles. And hence we have the web of lies in Huron. One lie leads to another lie, leads to another lie. Now, whose were justified, if any? Obviously, the Kennedale sisters could be considered justified. They're lying in defense of the truth, which their truth, they again believe to be the accurate truth, which is that Adonis did not actually fire first, that the Morel home was burned to the ground. Maybe or maybe not, that's the right truth. Who knows? You'll find out as the story goes on. And so builds up in Huron, as I suggested, the battle that builds inside Daniel from the moment him and William come to the Murrieta. And it leads to a place of turmoil where there would appear, to at least to the point of view character, to be none. And again, this is going to be the theme that I'm going to talk about now as we move through both my discussion of this recap as well as some other topics I'd like to talk about, but we're going to stick with the same theme, and that's lies. And the irony here is that throughout the chapter, we're made to believe that Daniel is the one in charge because his men are the ones that run the town, because he tells everyone what to do, because he's the one that's running the business, because he's the one that's meant to oversee the communication of all people in the Riverlands, including eventually in the Keegan's gang's goals, the Vahani. However, he is now the one who's trapped. And it's not just because of the sisters' lie. It's not just because Charles Langston is Charles Langston and it's hard to believe anything that he's saying or be entertained by him or to understand who he really is. Daniel is in this situation because of Daniel. Because Daniel for the entire time, for his entire journey, has told himself that he is something that he is not. Has told himself that the truth of Clovis's brutality isn't what it is. And so here he is, in his point of view, thinking that he is this immensely shrewd businessman. And he's been told by those around him the same. Because those around him are also lying. And thus we have a system that exists in reality other than what those who are involved in it think it is. And so many of us get lost in this same system. We see things happening and we interpret them wrong, not only, maybe propaganda is part of it. We'll get to that with the show Chernobyl in a little bit. But not only because of that. It's because we lie too. I've told myself in the past that I knew who I was. When I went to college, I thought I knew who I was. People, educators, teachers, parents, they all acted like I knew who I was. They act like the kids who go to the big university know who they are. And I'm proud of my university. Hook 'em horns. I'm proud that I made a lot of the right decisions. But I shouldn't have been allowed to vote till I was 25. That's a fact. No one should be. They're trying to lower the voting age to like 16 now or something like that. You don't know anything until you're 21. You really don't know anything until you're 25. You know nothing until you're 25. Nothing. The stuff you learn in school is pennies. Pennies. If you think you can afford happiness or understanding or reason without what you acquire after the age of 21, you're in for a rough ride. You're in for a rough ride. And the reason why that this is so important too isn't to put people down. This is because if you don't take the time, if you're a kid at the age of 18 to 21 and you think that you're going to come out of college understanding the world, and then you get out of college and you don't, you're going to feel like you're going insane. And that's what I felt like. And that's the reason why the dedication in book 1 is what it is. Let me open it right now. It's about climbing mountains. And it's so prevalent to this chapter. And there are things about this chapter that as I was reading it, I was like, this is the chapter where everything changes. About me being a writer, about me being a person. This is the first one where I could really open up about the struggles I was going through. Because again, I talked about this before. It's hard when you're talking about chapter 1 to 5 to not spoil too much about what's going to happen later. But this is the first one where things I was experiencing came to light. And this is one lie. One lie is that college teaches you to become an adult. It helps you to get there in some ways, but until you're 25, you don't know shit. You don't know anything. Math? Sure, that's important, but is math going to teach you how to be mentally healthy? Is English going to teach you how to be mentally healthy? Emotionally healthy? No, it's not. And again, I'm not saying be dumb. I'm not saying don't go to college. Go to college. But don't put the pressure on people who are going to college to make them think that when they graduate, it's just, that's it. Now you know everything. Now you know. Because you don't know. Even if you go away to school, I went away to school. And that's one of the best decisions you can make. If you don't go away to school, the voting age should be 28 for you if you didn't go away to school. But I went away to school and I suggested it to everyone. But even doing so, there's no clubs for you to join. There's no clubs for you to join outside of school that someone's going to organize for you. You have to find them. You have to find the intramural sport team. You have to find the passion, the group of people that like doing what you're doing. Excuse me. The sporting events, the anything that you like to do, the art department. There is none of that in real life. So you have to unlearn a lot of what you learn. And that's the point of this description, this dedication in this book. In life, there are mountains that stand before us. We either reach their peaks or we fall helplessly down. Yet the challenge isn't to navigate them safely. The real challenge is figuring out who we are and why. That's what college doesn't teach you. That's not part of the quote. I'm going to diverge from the quote for a second. That's what college doesn't teach you. College is a mountain. College was my first mountain, college and high school. Because here's the thing. You climb the college mountain, and there's a peak at the top. And you see it. You see it the whole way. There might be some clouds making it blurry at first. In high school, you might not know what your degree is going to be, or whether you're going to go for a master's or a PhD, but you climb and you get further until you can see through the clouds. And every bit of the climb is visible. And you go and you go and you go and you go, and you always have milestones. There are milestones there. There are flags that you need to reach. You need to finish this semester. You need to become a sophomore. You need to become a junior, a senior. And then you graduate and you reach the mountaintop. What you don't see when you're climbing is that when you reach the mountaintop, it's a flat line. The mountaintop is a flat line. And what do you do from there? Well, you're either going to dig a hole that goes straight down, you're going to walk flat, which might be worse than going straight down, or you build your own mountains. Nobody teaches you how to build your own mountains. And that's what you need to know how to do. It's the most important thing to know how to do outside of college, because even if you get a full-time job, what next? Who are you going to become? Do you know? Maybe you do. If you do, God bless you. You're lucky. Not a lot of people know. And I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm kind of trying to be condescending. But at the same time, it's a struggle. And there are so many people. The reason why it gets me fired up is because there's clearly so many people that don't realize that they're struggling the same way everyone else is. Everyone goes through it. No matter how much it looks like you know what you're doing, no one knows what they're doing. Which is why you shouldn't be allowed to vote till you're 25, and don't tell me otherwise. Anyway, let's finish this quote. So the real challenge is figuring out who we are and why we climb as we make our way up. Today, my next mountain stands before me, this series, and I'm ready to scale it. Because even though the destination is covered in clouds, I finally discovered my why. This book is for people who haven't yet found theirs. Keep climbing. And I beg you to keep climbing. Because again, you could either dig your grave, you could dig a fall all the way back down the mountain, you could go back to school again. A lot of people do that. Maybe that's the right answer. Who knows? Maybe that's your next mountain. But just be ready to start building a new one once you graduate the second time. Or you could go on a straight line. And that is terrifying for some. I need to build. I'd rather dig a hole in the ground than go in a straight line. I don't know what a straight line even means. Why am I here if I'm going on a straight line? What's the point? So you need to learn to build mountains. For me, that was this book series. For me, it was watching a TV show, getting super engrossed in it, getting kind of pissed about certain other TV shows, Walking Dead, and now Game of Thrones, trash, complete trash. And that's kind of what inspires me to keep going. That's exactly what inspires me to keep going, is using those things as my mountains. And I beg you to do the same. But having gotten into this, again, we were talking about lies. And sometimes the lies can make you forget what a mountain even is to you. And that's what I did to myself. So leading up to this book, leading up to starting this series, as I mentioned, this was my mountain. However, for a while before that, in between starting this, a little bit before starting this and being in college, there was only straight lines. Because I lied to myself about what made me happy. I lied to myself about what I liked to do. I lied to myself about where I wanted to live. I went and moved to Houston. I hated that city before I moved there out of college. I told myself, it's not going to be that big of a deal. You'll make it work. And sure, that's sometimes a good attitude to have. But when you get there and you don't even try to make it work, you're lying to yourself. You lied to yourself. When you know there's a place that makes you incredibly happy, Austin, Texas, it makes me incredibly happy living here. I'm living my best life living here. I knew that from the time I entered college. But you want to know why I went to Houston, Texas? Money. You want to know what the devil is? Money. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try to attain money. I'm a capitalist. I think money's great. But if you make a decision based on that and sacrifice the truth for that, you deserve your fate. And for me, that was misery. And that was the first lie. And then when I got there, and I didn't understand why I had a hard time making friends, even though the city was huge. And I didn't understand why I had a hard time making friends, even though I took a job where I knew the hours would be insane, even though I didn't have to. There were other options. There were options with better work-life balance. There were options that I knew the people who worked there and liked them, and I had a better personality to be compared with theirs, but I still chose this one, the one in Houston. I knew that there wasn't as much aesthetic scenery. I told myself that all these things didn't matter. And that led to me telling myself that other things didn't matter. I know that a big thing now for a lot of podcasters that I've listened to actively, Theo Vaughn being one, Owen Benjamin being another. Maybe Ben Shapiro's talked about this, but I'm not totally sure. I assume he probably has. But for a lot of men, watching porn, not going to be ashamed of that. But I was all the time. I'm not ashamed to say it now. Sorry. I was completely ashamed of it all the time. You do it, and you tell yourself it's not a big deal. You tell yourself you're not doing it to avoid talking to people. You're just doing it because, like, it's free, and why not? It's not a big deal. It's not going to ruin my sex life. It's not going to ruin my relationships. Lies. Lies, and you know they're lies. You know it. And I tell people this all the time. I bring it up to my friends now who don't want to hear it. They want to hear nothing of the fact that I haven't watched porn in 6 months. They don't give a shit. I say it to everyone because I'm like, look, as soon as that happened, literally within a month and a half of that happening, I found one of the best relationships of my life. Period. Like literally right next door. And I'm not saying that was fate that the bird landed next door. I'm saying that I wouldn't have been open to it. I wouldn't have been mentally intelligent enough because I'd have been lying to myself still, like I have been for years about it. And for some people, there's a different addiction or thing that you tell yourself isn't a big deal. For a lot of people, it's weed. All throughout my high school. And I posted something about this on Facebook, and I was in Denver to hashtag illegalize weed because, I mean, I've never had a problem with weed because I saw the people around me having a problem with weed. They would tell me that it's not a big deal. I had a friend literally who would have been collegiate track pro, whatever that means. I don't even know what that is for track, but he would have been any college. Within a year or two of him smoking weed, he quit track, and that's all he was doing. And who knows? Maybe track wasn't for him, but I don't believe that for a second. That shit makes you lazy. Not saying it's unhealthy for you completely. I mean, obviously, smoking anything is unhealthy for you, but I'm not saying that everyone needs to quit it. You could do whatever you want. Again, I'm a capitalist American. I think you can do most of what you want as long as it doesn't harm other people. However, there's no way for you to tell me that you believe that it's good for you. It's not. You know it's not. It's keeping you from doing something else more productive. You know that. So look, I mean, you don't have to convince me. I know that you're lying if you tell me it is. But look, just admit that you're lying to yourself. And if you don't, again, you end up in this cycle, in this endless cycle. And you live in Houston and you drive yourself to work an hour and a half there and back every day, even though you don't have to. And you have no aesthetic. You have nowhere to go visit. You know every day that you tell yourself, if my friends visited here, what would we go do? I wouldn't have been able to entertain my friends from out of town for like 2 days in Houston. I literally could think of nothing. There was like a hockey bar. Most of my friends aren't that into hockey, but otherwise I literally didn't know like what else to go do in that city. And it's for some people. I'm not saying it's not for everyone. Some people like Houston. Houston's got things to offer. I'm not judging you if you don't like Houston. I'm just using my story as an example because it wasn't for me, and I knew it, but I didn't accept it. I told myself in the back of my mind it wasn't true enough to convince myself, and then by the time reality hit me, I didn't even know who I was anymore. And that's the cost of lies. Let's talk about Chernobyl. We're going to talk about one of the best TV shows I've seen in a while. One of the best TV shows I've seen in a long while. And I'm going to pull up a quote from this TV show that's going to start us off. So Chernobyl is the story of Chernobyl, believe it or not. And the main theme of this show is lies, also known as communism. And one of the best episodes. So let me start with episode 4. So first of all, Chernobyl was the story of a nuclear reactor that broke down due to improper management, like technicians didn't know what they were doing. They told themselves that having younger technicians there wouldn't be a big deal. Lie, and it ended up costing them lives, many lives, down the line, thousands of lives. But the reactor broke down. The bottom line is the Soviets used cheap equipment, and they didn't really know what they were doing, and didn't accept it. And their entire society was based on lies, which is really the theme of socialism and communism. But I won't get into that right now. There's time for that later. We'll talk about that another time, maybe. America is the greatest country on earth. Okay, let's keep going. So, one of my favorite parts of this whole series was episode 4. Again, this is a show where we talk spoilers, especially for my favorite shows. So watch it. If you're not, I mean, it's a mini series, so there's not really a lot of twists or big things that you don't want to hear, I guess. I'm going to talk about big ideas from this show. So one of my favorite episode, and 5 was really good too, but episode 5 out of 5. There were only 5 episodes, but episode 4 was probably my favorite, and it was also the hardest to watch because episode 4 featured a military unit with a kid who was not previously in the military. He just came to, I guess, assist, and he joined up to assist with cleanup for the Chernobyl disaster. And this episode showed better than I could imagine being showed in a full hour, which it wasn't even, I mean, the part of the episode, and it had an actor who was very familiar looking. young kid who's been in a couple things. He seems like he's on a good path acting wise, but he wasn't even the full I mean, it wasn't the whole episode didn't feature these guys, but they were only in this episode and for a period of time. And this episode, better than almost any military show or movie I've ever seen, fully displayed the chaos of war and of lies. And there wasn't even a war going on, but it doesn't matter. This is what Dominic Turner was going through when he had to kill Jesse Billings and when he had to make the decision he made in this chapter. In this episode, this military unit their job was kill pet dogs and cats. And to say it was hard to watch is an understatement. I was in the airport, like, I was drinking an IPA or two, and I was in the airport on my way to Zion National Park in Las Vegas, and just telling my girlfriend, like, look, oh my God, this is so hard. I can't keep watching this, but I have to. It's so good. And I'm just watching this boy, like, become a man and also become a shell because he's got to kill pet dogs. And it's unenjoyable to me. That part's not enjoyable. But when it got to the crux of this kid's story, I almost cheered in the airport. At the end of a day of killing dogs, they sit down and drink vodka. In the beginning, I'm pretty sure if I remember right, he refuses the drink that he's offered. But by the end, he's drinking the vodka. And at the end, there's a sign, a banner, a propaganda banner on the wall that says, "Our goal is the happiness of all mankind." Lie. Lie, lie, lie. That isn't the goal of any government ever. Because it's not the goal of any system ever. And it's not an attainable goal. And you know it's not an attainable goal. You know anyone who says that their goal is the happiness of all mankind is A, a liar, or B, completely insane. And either way, they're not to be trusted, certainly, and they're absolutely not to be given power. And that's the problem with the Soviet Union and communism and socialism. That's why it all leads to chaos all the time. Because their goal is a lie. It's an unattainable lie and they know it. Because if your loved one dies, is it possible for the government to make you happy or whole? If someone kills you, or your family, is it possible for you to be made whole by the government? Is it ever possible for the government to make you happy? No, it's not possible for anyone other than yourself to make you happy. Anyone. People can amplify your happiness. People can make your situation better. But if you aren't in a place where where you are welcoming to happiness, you will not be happy under any circumstances. And that's why people who bury themselves in another person only to be left by that person don't know where to go. They don't know what to do from there. And that was me. That's been a lot of people. But that's why sometimes you have to be selfish. Because when you are in a place where you're accepting of happiness, then you can give happiness. You can amplify someone else's happiness. And the little bird will fly down and they will live next door to you. This took me years to learn. Years. I didn't even know this when I was writing this chapter. But it's so important to me now. Tell the truth to yourself and to everyone around you when possible. And when you lie, catch yourself. Catch yourself. You want to know what I used to lie about? I used to lie to people about hands that I would draw in poker. I would get an embarrassing loss. I would literally there would be games where I would look at my cards in the beginning, think I had a hand the whole time, forget what it was, and then just lose and just to a person who actually has a hand. And then I would go around telling people later that it was a bad beat where I had a good hand, but I just lost. And I really had nothing, but I just was too clueless and I forgot, which is fine. It happens. Poker's you play poker for hours. We have a chapter in book 2 where there's a poker scene because I love poker, and it's part of the game. But I would lie about it. And those things, you think it's nothing. You think it has no effect on you, but it eats you inside until there's nothing left. Until there's nothing left. And don't do that to yourself. I won't let you do that to yourself. That's not what this gang is about. This is not a mafia. We're not just here to kill. We're here to learn and kill and eat and hunt and conquer and go west. But you don't get there. You don't get to a good place unless you grow and you tell the truth. And you bleed for your family. And it's not always easy, and sometimes you're going to lie. And that's okay. You can do that. But try not to. Now let me get to this quote. So anyway, so the series kind of revolves around a scientist, who is trying to get the truth out about Chernobyl. However, the filthy socialist communists lie about the fact that it's not a big deal, and they try to control the spread of misinformation, which is terrifying to hear. I mean, let's be real, guys. I'm gonna be real for a second. If you think, honestly, that CNN, NBC, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Fox News, really any mainstream media, Vox is cancer. If you think that any of those news sources aren't literally propaganda, you're out of your fucking mind. You're literally, this is not exaggeration. I literally took a picture of a tabloid newspaper that I saw on a CBS the other day, and I sent it to my friend, and I was like, more reliable than the Washington Post and New York Times and CNN. 100% fact. The Onion is more reliable than those news sources because the Onion is satirical and there's truth in satire. That's a tangent. But the crazy thing, the reason why I bring the tangent up is because when I'm watching Chernobyl and I see a propaganda sign on the wall, or when I'm looking at pictures of North Korea and I see propaganda posters, I'm like, why can't that be our propaganda? At least it's obvious. At least I could see that and laugh and be like, it's a cartoon. The people at current media companies lie all the time. Literally all the time. And they do it covertly enough that they trick people into believing it. There's no looking at a propaganda sign when you have knowledge and saying, hooray, that's honest. That's the truth. Like, we can identify that. So keep an eye out all the time. Again, not just for your own sources of lies and elsewhere, because it's equally important. Because one leads to the other. One leads to the other. If you watch CNN one day, and they say one truth, and you tell yourself, well, they're mostly telling the truth, so when they come out with a story about like kids attacking a Native American man, that never happened. I mean, they're going to make mistakes sometimes. Right? No, it's all lies. It's literally all lies. Find somewhere else to get your news. It's not okay. None of it is okay. Anyway, we're going to round out this episode. We're almost done here. But again, I just want to stress the importance. So at all costs, avoid lies. At all costs, avoid cognitive dissonance, which is the lies you tell yourself and that you justify. You're not a psychopath if you lie to yourself. You have cognitive dissonance and you justify things. You have a moral code. Psychopaths have no moral code. Clovis Keegan is a psychopath. He has no moral code. He doesn't justify things that happen. He does in his own sick way, but he doesn't even follow his own moral code sometimes. He's a psychopath. You're not a psychopath. If you lie to yourself, if you find yourself depressed, if bad things happen to you, if people get you down, all you can do is focus on yourself and bury yourself in the truth. Bury yourself in the truth. So, and this brings us to, again, I'm going to kind of go in circles at certain times, but I'm trying to stay on the general track. So again, the series is about a scientist who knows the truth of Chernobyl, or who's trying to figure it out, and he's trying desperately to get the right answers so he can fix the situation and make the situation better. And hopefully, and the question in the end is whether or not he contributes to the Soviet Union avoiding this issue in the future. Or since the Soviet Union kind of dissolved because of this, I guess Russia avoiding this in the future. Anyway, at the end, there is a trial for 3 of the men who were involved in the nuclear meltdown, who were directly negligent and responsible. And in the trial, when the scientist decides that it's time to come out and just say the truth and acknowledge the lies he's told, both in the past and that he feels responsible for because of his country, he gives one of the most powerful speeches I've seen in a TV or movie in a long time. I mean, a long time. And this is what he says. When the truth offends, we lie and lie until we can no longer remember it is even there. That's the first part, and that's exactly what we've been talking about the whole time. So I'm right. Just kidding. But mostly I'm right. But so when the truth offends, we lie and lie until we can no longer remember it is even there. But it is still there. And it will always be there. Again, breaking from the quote, it will always be there. There is truth in the world. It is unavoidable. The scale, the musical scale, is the truth. That part I got from Owen Benjamin. I'm not going to lie. The man kind of helped lead me to a lot of these realizations, but I'm just further trying to communicate them. And I realize now, as I go through my own stories, that I didn't think about this at the time, how true these things are. There's a reason why certain musical notes make sense, because the scale is the truth. Because reason and logic exist, and you know it. And if you bury it, you will be buried by shame. Let me continue. Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt is paid. And this is what I was talking about when it comes to the moment things break down. The moment I'm in Houston and I'm realizing that nothing about the way I've been living is the way I want to live. Nothing. I want to change everything. Where I would once fear the cost of truth, where I would once fear of the embarrassment of telling my friends what was actually in my hand when I called a potential full house on the board. Now I only ask, what is the cost of lies? Where I would once fear the cost of truth, now I only ask, what is the cost of lies? The cost of lies is lives, it's happiness, it's love, it's love. It's everything you once knew that was good in the world, family, friends. It's immeasurable. And again, I know you're not going to wake up and just tell the truth all the time tomorrow. There are some times that nobody's perfect. There are things I still lie to myself about. It's been a long time. I'm proud of myself. I've been doing real good. I don't lie to other people. And keeping little things away from people is okay. There's certain things that not everyone has to know. There's a difference between lying and being private. You don't have to tell. You shouldn't tell anyone of your relations with people that don't deserve to know those things, that won't help you in any way. So there's certain things that are worth being private. There's a difference between lying and being private. You don't have to tell everyone everything. But when you're doing things that you know are wrong, that you shouldn't be doing, you're better off not doing them all the time. Anyway, we'll wrap there. This has been a fun episode. This has been one of the episodes I've been waiting to do for a while, and next week, I've already recorded the chapter for chapter 7. That is one of my favorite chapters of the whole book. And as we wrap from chapter 7 on, they only get better. It's only getting crazier. And my writing gets better as it goes too. And that's something I've really noticed and been proud of. I'm going back and making certain edits for book 1. I'd like to kind of apologize. And one of the things that I've learned in the past couple weeks in going back and revisiting some of this and doing this podcast is that my writing ability when I first started was not what I thought it was. And again, I didn't think I knew it was the first book I wrote. There were things I just straight up didn't know. A lot of things I straight up didn't know. And that led to mistakes. And having gone back through it, I found those mistakes and I'm correcting them. There are ones that need to be corrected. There are ones that I can't lie to myself and tell myself it doesn't matter that they're there. So there should be the fully revised versions of Crimson River and Crystallized. There are one or two things. I mean, it's pretty awesome seeing over time how much you improve. There were one too many mistakes in Crimson River. There were one or two things in Crystallized that I just don't want. There are just errors that I just don't want there to be. And then in Crescent Heart, I mean, it just plummeted to the ground. I mean, everything flows so smoothly, and I'm so proud of it. And I'm proud of all of them. And again, there's even now, even the things that I'm not one of the things I mentioned, I think last week about Crimson River was that there are certain parts of exposition, right? Where now, if I knew, I'd probably describe more of who a character is through something they're doing. And I think I didn't do too much of that, but there are certain parts where I definitely would get rid of certain exposition in Crimson River, but I'm not going to go back and rewrite the whole book. It's just not worth it. I think it's a great story as it is. But definitely the production things, the certain text things need to be fixed, and they are being fixed. And they will be fixed and released at the same time as book 4, which right now, so to get to my end of episode summary, I think book 4, it's looking like probably, I want to say July, but somewhere between July 7th and July 14th that week. It will 100% be between July 7th and July 14th. Cryptic Kingdom will be released. And like I said, the corrections to book 1 and 2 will be released. It's one of the beauties of self-publishing. I might talk next week more about self-publishing and the journey there. since I went on a pretty emotional, pretty kind of deep, heavy talk today. We'll see where next week goes based on that. But again, Cryptic Kingdom between July 10th or July 7th and July 14th. I'll have a more exact date as we go. Remember that there is a giveaway that's going to be going on. I'm giving away books 1 through 4 at the time of release of Cryptic Kingdom. I'm just going to keep this giveaway going until then. I mean, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to give away Cryptic Kingdom, books 1 through 4, or just book 4 to literally anyone who asks. If you come to me, and I'm not going to publish this, I'm not going to publish that I'm saying this. I'm going to put this on the end of every episode, and literally anyone who asks me with a limit, like I'm going to limit it to 10 people. The first 10 people who contact me and just ask me for book 4, or all the books, book 4 or all the books. If you already have the first 3, I'm not sending you another copy of the first 3. I'll send you book 4 and maybe like a gift bag goodie. But anyone, the first 10 people who contact me directly or tag me in a post, if you'd be willing to share, I'd be happy about that. If you'd be willing to share the series, and even if you contact me directly, I'll ask you to please share. It would be nice of you. But I will send you books 1 through 4 or book 4. Easy as that. Just contact me. 10 people. That simple. Okay. So again, thanks for listening in. If you made it this far, we're at a full hour now. I love you all. Civilands is available on Amazon. If you haven't already purchased it, books 1 to 3 are there. If you'd like to wait for the changes to be made, I wouldn't blame you. But I will send out all those books if you just request them. Like I said, you can, if you are willing to wait and you don't want to buy them right now, literally just ask me for them. If you haven't started book 1, just literally, like I said, contact me and I will send you all of them for free once the changes are made and once everything is polished, ready to go. If you have already read books 1 to 3 and you did enjoy them, because the story is awesome and it's only getting better with Cryptic Kingdom and book 5, which I think I have a name for. I'm not confident I'm going to share it yet, but I'm fairly confident that it's going to be the final name. Still thinking about it. But if you did enjoy them, like I said, they're all on Amazon, exclusively on Amazon. If you would like to go there and review, that would be fantastic. This podcast is an audiobook series, so all the books are here in audiobook format, but they're also on Amazon in ebook and paperback. So whichever one you prefer doing, if you like having the feeling of paper in your hands, if you are okay with it, if you like to just read in bed with the light on, but you prefer reading to listening, or if you like to listen instead and you're not really a reader, you have options. You have options here. Plus, the audiobook podcast is free, so listen wherever you'd like. However, if you do like to listen and you want to support as well, buying books is always a great way to do that. I might set up a Patreon at some point or a Subscribestar, but I'm still thinking about that. If I really want to do that, I'm not sure yet. Going to figure that out. Anyway, I'm Nicholas Austin. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Remember, what is the cost of lies? This has been a review for Gossamer. This has been Tuesday Night Fiction. We'll be back next week with Chapter 7, What Once Was Whole. Thanks for listening as always. Welcome to all to the Civil Gang. To the Bold Alone, I'll talk to you next week. Thanks. Good night.